But the fact is that the war on terror is an old construct, an older construct, and it was set out as an ideology, as a plan, as a strategy, already in 1979 by Benjamin Netanyahu at the Netanyahu Institute on Terrorism, sometimes referred to as the Yonatan Institute. And in 1979, they had a conference called the Jerusalem Conference on International Terrorism, where George Herbert Walker...
In 1979.
79, July. And George Herbert Walker Bush spoke there, you know, the former CIA director and then candidate for vice president or president of the United States. And the thing is that they laid out this propaganda push calling for the United States to basically, and the Western democracies, to bring their militaries to the Middle East to fight the terrorist entities that were plaguing Israel. And they were doing this, the doctrine goes like this. Netanyahu says that Israel is attacked by Islamic terrorists, not because of any sort of Palestinian dispute or occupation, but because Israel is a Western nation. Therefore, by that logic, the West is actually the target. Israel's only being hit because they're the ones that are further extended into the region. But he says the real target is the West. Therefore, the West has an obligation to come and bring its militaries in the Middle East to make war against these entities that are attacking Israel. So in this way, he kind of conflates Israel with the West, and that therefore Israel's problems become our problems. You see? And this was in 1979. And it was pushed with it was a very fraudulent data. The logic is flawed and the data is flawed. Never mind, the doctrine was put out there. So they constructed this, and then for years later, he wrote books called Fighting Terrorism, How the West Can Win, and things like that, where he continued to reiterate this notion, this idea, this strategy.
This theme that the West needed to be involved with Israeli problems.
Yes, and that this should be a global war on terror, and that the United States should lead it. And so they constructed, you know, this whole construct, ideological construct, and it sat there like a bonfire ready to be lit. And so 9/11 was the spark that actually made that real. And on September 11th, for example, the highest Israeli soldier and the former Prime Minister, Ehud Barak, was on the BBC World Television before the towers even fell. Both towers had been struck by the planes, but the buildings hadn't fallen yet. So you can see that's very early on. And he was on TV, and which is BBC World is the largest English-speaking TV network in the world. And he said, the world will never be the same from today on. He says, we know who did this. We know it's Osama bin Laden. And we know where Osama bin Laden is. And he said, now is the time for the United States to begin a concrete, operational war on terror.